In this video, we'll continue where we stopped. So we are introducing a different data collection technique, which is the survey. And the main tool it uses is just by using the questionnaire. So here it's an investigation of one or more characteristics of a population. And this is commonly done by an interview, internet. You basically send a questionnaire for people to fill. You can call them, you can do it through phone or by mail. Mail is a bit disappearing. The internet is taken over by storm. So that's just a survey. You ask people questions and then you record what they say. So a survey is conducted on a sample. So this is an example. A survey is conducted on a sample of female physicians to determine whether the primary reason for their career choice is financial stability. So if you take a look, it's already telling you it's a sample of female physicians and it wants to know why they made that choice. That's it. Let's take a number of examples here where we take a look at the different methods of data collection. We've seen about 4 of them. We've talked of the observation, we've talked of experiments, we've talked of simulation, and we've talked of the survey. Okay, so a study of the effect of changing flight patterns on the number of airplane accidents. So this is a study that is carried out. Do you think it's done using an experiment? Is it done using a survey? Is it done using simulation? What do you think? Well, you can clearly see that if you want to change flight patterns, it's going to be too expensive and really dangerous for you to use real airplanes with people inside and change it to see what will happen. That is simply not acceptable. So we generally use simulation to do something like that. We use some mathematical models. The next one says a study of the effect of eating oatmeal on lowering blood pressure. So if you want to find out if when someone takes oatmeal that will affect their blood pressure, generally you want to put people in the right setting and administer that. This is typical of an experiment. Now the next example is study on how 4th grade students solve a puzzle. So generally you want to sit down and observe how they do it. So that will use the observational study. And finally, a study of US residents' approval rating on the US president. So they just ask people their approval rating of the president. Do you approve, yes or no? Or what percentage, how much do you approve of his work? Depending on the question, but it's still a question. So this is typical of a survey. Okay. Now let's take a look at the different methods of choosing a sample. Now, if you are going to use a sample, how do you choose that sample? The first approach, the first sampling technique, we will use what is known as the random sample. So under the random sample, you have your population and you randomly choose. In other words, every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. Okay, you generally use Today, we easily use computer methods. We just use the computer to randomly choose from the population, giving everyone the same chance. So the main random sampling technique is the simple random sample, where every possible sample of the same size has the same chance of being selected. Now, the next sampling technique is known as the stratified sample. So under stratified, you have a population. So think of the population of Montreal. You simply divide a population into groups and you select a random sample from each group. So you have groups, maybe groups by you group by neighborhood and you randomly select from each neighborhood. So to collect a stratified sample of the number of people who live in Westridge County households, you could divide the households into socioeconomic levels and then randomly select households from each level. Why do they do that? To make sure that every income level is represented, to give every income level the same chance of being part of the sample. Now let's take a look at cluster sample. You simply divide the population into groups or clusters and select all the members in one or more, but not all of the clusters. So you may take the different neighborhoods of Montreal. You don't select all the neighborhoods, but you select one or more neighborhoods and you run your things. So in the Westridge County example, you could divide the households into clusters according to zip codes, for example. Then select all the households in one or more, but not all zip codes. So you have different zones, and then you may choose one. You may choose zone 1 or zone 1 and 2 or zone 1 and 4. It really depends on what you are trying to achieve. Now you finally have the systematic sample, whereby you choose a starting value at random, and then systematically you choose every kth element of the population. So it's as if you have, let's take for example, all the students at Dawson College. You may give everyone a particular number. It may go from 1 to 11,000 if we have 11,000 students. So you start maybe from student 5, and then you want to choose every 6th member. And then you'll go from 1, and every time you come across the 6th member, you choose them. So this is what we are talking about. So for example, in the Westridge County example, you could assign a different number to each household, randomly choose a starting number, then select every 100th household. So here, for example, you start here, you skip 2, you pick. You skip 2. Every time it's the third, and so on and so forth. That is what systematic sample is all about. And finally, you have the worst approach of choosing your sample. It's called convenience sample. You choose only members of the population that are easy to get. You may open your door, whoever passes along the street, those are the ones you interview. It often leads to bias studies. This is just not recommended, but there are situations where it's just the only way you can do it. Now let's take the examples here to identify the different ways of choosing your sample. You divide the student population with respect to majors and randomly select and question some students in each major. So you've had your population, you've put them in different majors, and then you randomly choose. We've seen that as the stratified sampling approach. The next one is you assign each student a number and generate random numbers. You then question each student whose number is randomly selected. So here you are dealing with simple random sample. This is typical of it. And that will be it. I'll see you in class and we'll continue.